Why? What is this? Who did this? Why did they do it? Who greenlit this? Why? What kind of monster would do this? Who thought this was a good idea? Why? Why?
Well, this is going to be a fun one. I have to say, welcome to everybody to come back, but also welcome to my amazing guest, Mr. King Emperor Penguin.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My, what an entrance. Thank you very much.
Yes. I have to say that this is a very excellent YouTuber, and I am very pleased to be able to welcome him on to the stream as my guest. I've been a big fan of your content since I think it was your Battle of the Five Armies historical battle analysis. I thought that was fascinating to watch. I think that was the first video of yours I found, and then from there I just I got to get more of this guy's content, and the Battle of Winterfell was very cathartic, to say the least.
I'm glad you enjoyed. Funnily enough, I wasn't actually planning to make that one, but one of my friends who is big into Game of Thrones said, "You have to do it. You have to do it."
Yeah, it kind of how, and it kind of makes it even worse when you find out what was happening behind the scenes. They actually filmed that in the middle of winter, and all the porta potties and utilities froze.
Where did they film this exactly in the middle of winter?
Northern Ireland.
Wow. Oh my. That might explain some of the acting.
Yeah, they're kind of constipated, I guess, from just I hate being on this.
I thought it was genuine fear, but good acting because the director had said skeletons are coming at you, but no, I guess there's a more simple explanation to the whole affair.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to get to know you a little bit better. What made you want to kind of start doing YouTube in kind of the first place?
Ooh, to be honest, I was my friends were getting tired of me talking about films with them all the time. What happened was I would watch or read or otherwise interact with a piece of media, and then be like, guys, have a look at this this poorly constructed, etc. They got tired of it, and I needed to find a way to express myself. And I'd been watching lots of YouTube critics. I think Red Letter Media and Nostalgia Critic, if you can believe, as an introduction to the form. And on the anime side, a YouTuber called Digibro. And thought to myself, okay, I can make videos to express my thoughts. So that's literally it. I just needed a way to express myself.
Oh, nice. That's really cool. And it seems as though your focus is military history. Was that is that one of your big passions? Is that something that you were passionate about in school, or is it more like a Shadowversity where it's your hobby that you turned into a YouTube channel career?
I and my friends have always been interested in military history. I found all other types of history a little dry. So a friend was trying to get me into English Civil War religious history, which is of course a very if you're into that type of thing, it's a very interesting set of affairs. But the only thing which interested me about the English Civil War was the battles, not necessarily the politics or the religious issues, which of course all combined into one war, which we know as the English Civil War.
Yeah, I got into. I actually really enjoyed military history as well, but I mostly got into history because of Age of Empires.
I remember playing that as really young as well.
Yeah, it was actually weird. Like I played Battle for Middle Earth, a similar RTS game at a friend's house, and I was like, I really want this game, but my parents were like, we can't find it, but here's a close equivalent. Here's Age of Empires. So I played through the Attila the Hun campaign. And I was just like, okay. And then I remembered that my parents had bought a bunch of, since we were homeschooled, they bought a bunch of high school history lectures by a guy named Linwood Thompson. And he was fun because he didn't like dress up in a suit and tie, except for the very first time you see him. Every other time he wears a costume and puts on an accent.
Really?
Yes. Like when he dresses up in when he discusses the fall of the Roman Empire, he comes out and he's wearing this horrible blonde like bob wig, like what you see Cersei Lannister wearing, and he's wearing this like burlap like shirt and pants, and he's speaking. Barbarian Thompson here today, and we will be talking about the fall of the Roman Empire.
That's one way to teach, I suppose. I know a teacher for primary school. I might suggest this to him.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and like he would even like sometimes he would dress up as characters, like he would dress up as like Marco Polo, a few different historical figures. Like I think he did what was one he did? I know when he did his American history, he dressed up as Aaron Burr. He also did a few things as like a few specific history in the Revolutionary War, and I think there's a mountain man. I can't remember who it was. I think it wasn't Hugh Glass. He just talked about him, but there's so many of those lectures. They're about 30 minutes long and they're really funny. And he like is very fond of the word, we kicked the Roman butt and we marched across Europe, leaving Rome defenseless. Or just the phrase kicking butt. And it's just like, I love you. You're hilarious. He just kept using that phrase. And it was great.
Child friendly then, I see.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think like the best way that he like, I think one of my favorites was actually the like what you're saying, the English Civil War, because the way he described it is just like, and he dissolves Parliament, and he dissolves Parliament, and he dissolves Parliament. And it's just the way he described it was just funny.
It's not that much of an exaggeration, to be fair.
No, it's not. And like it's you want to give me a loan? Well, not really. Good. You're going to give me a loan. And you're going to give me a loan for this much. And I'm not going to give you a loan. Okay, you're going to prison.
Raise taxes. No. Parliament's dissolved.
Yeah. So like what would you say is like your favorite era of history? Is it the English Civil War, or are there a few others that you very much enjoy?
To research and study. I'm not sure if I have a particular preference, but I ended up mostly reading about World War One and World War Two.
Okay.
With sort of like a sprinkling of ancient warfare, Romans, Greeks, Carthaginians, and a few medieval battles, but it's mostly individual battles. And then the English Civil War, my knowledge is a bit more coherent. So one could ask me, for instance, about a few battles which happened between between Rome and other barbarians, and then they'd ask, well, what was happening at the time? Other than that, and I'd say, I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah, my primary interest is like lots of medieval history, especially like medieval battles, though I do quite enjoy. I think I watched a very, very old TV show on the History Channel called Decisive Battles, where it went of the ancient world, where it went through multiple battles in the ancient world, such as Kadesh, Cannae, Adrianople, Catalonian fields, or Cannae. Well, not Cannae. What it was. Catalonian fields is the one that comes to mind. Maybe it was. I can't remember the name of the other name of the place, but I think one of my favorite battles was actually either the Battle of Galgamela or the Battle of the Hydaspes. Because the Battle of Hydaspes is basically one of the few, like the major times where a river was recorded as like an obstacle that one of the armies had to get around and get across in order to fight the enemy. And the way that Alexander the Great just marched his army up and down until finally the Indian king just gave up and said, like, I'm done shadowing him. I'm just going to sit here and wait. And so that allowed Alexander the Great to make a night crossing in the middle of the night during a rainstorm.
Which battle was this? Sorry,
the battle.
Any bells.
The Battle of the Hydaspes. It's Alexander the Great. I think it's. I can't remember the date off the top of my head. I mostly just remember the events of the battles rather than the dates. But it's Alexander the Great versus Porus of India, and it ended up being like the only battle in India that Alexander the Great ever fought, because a bunch of Indian troops got in the way and said, you ain't coming into our territory. We may fight each other, but when united, we got a pretty friggin' big army.
As well as I understand it, his men were tired of campaigning as well.
Yeah. Seeing a 250,000-man army supposedly up against them with a lot of elephants made Alexander the Great's men say, nope, we are done. We've been campaigning for years. We are done. And it's possibly that was one of the reasons why he died, was because he contracted malaria, though alcohol poisoning is one of them.
I've heard several accounts. Some maintain it was poison. Others that he was a drunkard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, like how many like different accounts of history there are, especially with ancient things, and with somebody like Alexander the Great, who's kind of almost a mythic figure in some ways, where he just seems like this perfect general who won every single battle.
Yeah, I think the ancients were especially interested in trying to use history to inspire their citizens and people to great deeds. Because I remember there's a account of a battle. I can't actually remember the battle now, but there was an account of one of Hannibal's victories.
Was it Cannae?
It wasn't Cannae. Preceded it.
Let me think. I watched BC Battles about his campaign. Was it the Lake Trebia? Was that one of them? Was that the one you're thinking of?
I think it was mainly fought in some hilly territory, but it's been a while since I researched this one. But essentially, there was a famous Roman general there who supposedly had the scalps of many ghouls hanging about his waist, and the ghouls who were a part of Hannibal's army spotted him, and according to I forget the historian's name, but according to the official history, one of the ghouls gave a dramatic speech which clearly goes over a paragraph saying, let's get him, essentially. And the likelihood that someone stopped in the middle of a battle to give a speech about how this was a man who had killed many of their kindred, and it was time for vengeance is rather quite low.
Yeah, I would imagine it is. There's probably more along the lines of charging into the fight, as opposed to just like stepping out. I shall give this dramatic speech like you see in Lord of the Rings or Braveheart.
Oh, not Braveheart.
They may
I'd
take our
on that one.
Oh yeah, it's very historically inaccurate, especially with the military. I think.
Just...
Oh.
Yeah, you continue.
Oh, go for no. I was finished. Go for it.
Oh, it's not that it's necessarily historically inaccurate. It's just that the battles can be simplified to we charge. No, we stop and wait for them to charge. Then we charge again. It's that simple.
Mm.
And you're like, okay, of all the things you could have done since you were being you were obviously not keeping to the history books. With all the things you could have played around with, you've simplified it to we charge, they charge, we wait for these guys to charge. Oh wait, they're betraying us, we lose.
Dang. I've watched cynical reviews take a look at Braveheart, and I was just like, oh, okay, this is an interesting look at historical events, and definitely a lot of changes here. I wonder, is Robin Hood Prince of Thieves on the docket? Because I know that would be an interesting one.
Do you mean the one with Alan Rickman?
Yes, the one with Alan Rickman.
Historically speaking, questionable. Entertainment value, though, is through the roof.
Oh, yes. I'm gonna cut your heart out with a spoon. Infinitely
Why
quotable.
a spoon, cousin?
Because it's dull, you twit. It'll hurt more.
There was a... Did you hear the story behind Alan Rickman and the film, though?
I don't think I have. Please tell me.
So Alan Rickman didn't want to do the role originally, and the script was different. But Kevin Costner wanted him in the film, and eventually Kevin Costner gave him the script and said, "Okay, make the changes you want to make to the character." So Alan Rickman said, "Sure." So he got together a couple of friends of his and said, "This character needs to be funnier and a better villain. What do we do?" So many of the lines which we all appreciate weren't originally in the script until he handed it back to Kevin Costner and said, "Okay, here's the changes I want. If you make these changes, I'll act in your film."
Good choice. That was a good choice.
I'd like to see the original script now. Because the rumor had it that Kevin Costner was very keen on having the spotlight on himself. But these changes made sure that we remember out the Sheriff of Nottingham a little more.
Yeah. As well as Azim. You whine like a mule. You are still alive.
I'm convinced that's one of Morgan Freeman's best roles.
I would agree with that. I would definitely concur. Like most of them kind of probably Shawshank is probably up there, I imagine. I need to see Shawshank. I find it very shameful that I've seen The Room, A Kid in Aladdin's Palace, A Kid in King Arthur's Court, and a bunch of other, and The Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker, and Knives Out, and Game of Thrones Season 8 before I've seen Shawshank Redemption.
You could... Well, I can sort of join the club. I haven't seen Game of Thrones Season 8, but I haven't seen Shawshank either.
You're better off not seeing Season 8.
It's funny because I tried to get into Game of Thrones and I watched the first season and went, there's too much too many sex scenes for my liking, so I'm switching it off. And then everyone was saying, "Oh, come on, you must keep watching it. It's so great. It's so great." And then D&D. So I think I dodged a bullet, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah, man. The actual show was a terrible train wreck, but the behind the scenes are like, how did this happen? How is there no oversight on like the last 4 seasons? Because they just kind of inserted subplots at random. They inserted like a 40-minute subplot last minute, like after the writing period was done, and tried to make their costumers, hey, we want you to do all of this. Also, we want to film in a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Okay, we don't care about the time restrictions and filming restrictions. We're just going to do it.
Which was the I've watched Muller's video, so I kind of know what's going on. Which was the subplot they added at the last minute?
Dorn.
Okay, it rings no bells.
Oh, it's season 5. It's way before season 8.
Oh, right.
So part of the problem is like, it seemed like it was so strange. Like when I found this guy called Dragonlord who like is a YouTube journalist who like goes through cited quotes, interviews, and other things related to like the show, like like trying to be as accurate as he could to the actual production. And it seemed as though every single season from season 5 onward had some kind of production falling apart. Like the Battle of the Bastards, like that you've seen and did a review. Originally, that infantry pincer movement was supposed to be cavalry.
That makes sense.
Yes, but the issue was they wanted 70 live horses to charge in among the people in that melee crush.
Good luck getting past health and safety on that one.
Yeah, they didn't do the research on what the filming restrictions with horses were. Also, they only gave 12 days for training and training the horses and shooting.
12 days?
Yes. After the director said, I need 28 days. You have 12. And that was just the rough draft script. And he like said, okay, cut this at this, and this out. And then they came back a little bit later. Oh, here you go. And he's like, are you kidding? You added stuff. This is going to take 42 days.
Oh boy. Stuff I don't know about. I only saw the debacle around season 8 because of Muller's long videos on the subject.
Yeah, I just found it because Anomaly Inc. Recommended the Dragonlord, so I was like, oh, okay, I might as well watch it. And I was just like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? How did these like train wrecks happen? And it's like the director was like, I was fighting with them for months over it, and it's like, I can't do this. This is physically impossible. I'm not even going to draft it after schedule for this. This is insane. And yeah, they didn't have a writer's room. That is as accurate. They admitted to this.
They didn't have a writer's room?
Nope. It was just them at a computer. Those 2 guys at a computer.
You mean D&D?
Yep. Passing down directives.
Is this about the time George R. R. Martin left?
Yeah. There were 2 other writers, Dave Hill and Brian Cogman, both of whom were former assistants that they promoted.
I do remember hearing about this. I think it was in a Smudcast stream you were part of.
Yes, I was remarking on it. Yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to Game of Thrones behind the scenes, or just Game of Thrones in general, because I'm just strange.
Well, it's fun to do an autopsy sometimes.
Yeah, especially like when it's like something like Star Wars, like, and it's
Oh
kind of
boy.
said that we're kind of never going to get like this kind of candor from Star Wars, where it's just like they like allowed you to know like the like on season 5, the costumer Michelle Clapton, who's won several Emmys for her costuming on the show, said of the costumes in Dorne, it was a nightmare. Those costumes are literally the worst thing I've ever seen. And because we had to rush and use other molds for them. You got a lot of love in the chat. You actually had there's actually a question. Med Courier 6. What is the most interesting theater in World War II for you?
Also, can I turn up my mic a bit? Can everyone hear me a bit better now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Most interesting. There's a lot of theatres which aren't talked about. Personally, the Eastern Theatre is very interesting.
Okay.
When Operation Barbarossa happens.
Okay.
But as well,
could you tell me a bit about that? I've never heard of that battle before.
Oh, it's not a battle; it's a theatre of war.
Okay.
So, Operation Barbarossa was the German invasion of the Soviet Union and its territories.
Okay.
With the two main pushes being towards Leningrad and Moscow. And it was at this time that essentially they failed to take Moscow and to take Leningrad for numerous reasons. And then after that, the war started to turn, especially when the strategy was to head towards, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, the Caucasus region, to acquire oil reserves and to take Stalingrad. So it's watching what was previously assumed as an invincible army being defeated, but not in. I mean, they say Stalingrad was the turning point, but there were multiple battles across the Eastern Front, and the Battle of Kursk was when things really turned for the worst for the German side. And that is a very interesting battle to read about.
Don't fight in Russia in winter.
Yeah, don't. I mean, to the credit of the Verchmere, they almost succeeded, and some historians speculate that if they had succeeded at taking Moscow, Stalin's nerve might have cracked, and he might have come to the negotiation table. But yeah, don't invade Russia in winter. Make sure that you have all the logistics sorted out and all the like.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, okay. Nihilus Nilium had something. Okay. Wasn't supposed to be the biggest force. He wanted to take the Caucasus first with Stalingrad, but his general stuff wanted to take Moscow first. Interesting.
Ash, I didn't know that one. Might have to reread.
Cool.
Oh, hey there, Wolf.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a big turnout today. We got a good stuff.
Low occupation army?
Yeah. So for you, I was kind of wondering, like, for you, like, you do a lot of like military analysis, but how much do you like what would you say like is the most important like elements of like a battle in a film, and then like just the story in general? Like, what are the things that like are the most important elements, would you say?
In a battle or in a story in general? Let's just deal with the battle side first, I suppose.
Yeah.
I would say that in terms of the military elements of a story, depending on the genre you're going for, if you're going for a comedy, I guess you can do anything. especially if you're doing a parody. But if we're talking about something like, I don't know, Star Wars or anything of that nature where a serious tone and mood is established, where you're supposed to feel tension when you're watching the battles, or you're supposed to think that the individuals in question are competent at their job, it's not the absence of mistakes. It's more the recognition that mistakes are mistakes and the punishment of mistakes. So some people have watched my videos, and occasionally they have got the idea that I don't want any fictional faction making mistakes. That I want them to always be on the ball and stuff. But that's quite ridiculous because
that's impossible. Even in any battle, that's impossible.
It's impossible, but also you need a reason why the villain loses or the heroes lose if that's what you want to write. So so it's important that you get the sense that the individuals are competent, they know what they're doing, and if they make mistakes, it should be accepted that they've made mistakes. It's one thing for a bad decision to be made, and the side which makes the mistake is punished and loses, or loses a lot of men, or has a hollow victory. It's another thing if they do all these weird and strange maneuvers and then they end up winning somehow with very few losses. And it's when that happens that a lot of people, a lot of people start to lose interest, because what is revealed is essentially plot armor, but on a larger scale. So my favorite example is when the elves jump over the spear wall made by the dwarves in the Battle of the Five Armies.
Oh, that part's so dumb. Yeah, I totally agree that is a very dumb part.
I mean, the problem is, I have seen, you don't know how many defenses I've read of that. I have found so many comments defending that very decision. And, I mean, some of them explain the decision. So some say, look, the elves are haughty egotists, and they want to show the dwarves who's boss by jumping over them and getting first kill. And it's like, well, okay, but this wouldn't turn out well. Also, may I point out that their flanks are now completely undefended? So they can get outflanked and surrounded, which is not a good position for any army to be in. And then the counterpoint is, oh, but orcs are stupid. And this is just like, yeah, they're stupid because the writers, the creators, sort of just wanted their epic moment with the elves jumping over the phalanx, over the pseudo phalanx without any consequences, and this is why the orcs don't outflank. I can't imagine someone like Tolkien, for instance, writing a battle scene like that.
Yeah.
Or any writer who wanted to write a serious sort of battle. So you sort of see this plot armor, and it coats not just a few protagonists or a few characters, it cloaks two entire armies.
Yeah, the dwarven and elven armies are insanely plot armored, especially the dwarven army.
I'll actually do a 180 and defend them slightly here. They do have very few dwarves at the end of the battle, but they would have all died very quickly.
Yeah. I do like the Battle of the Five Armies because of kind of like spectacle and entertainment value, but I totally acknowledge there's some stupid stuff going on there. I was like, I cannot defend like or like the really dumb tone problems, especially in the extended edition.
You've watched the extended edition of The Hobbit. I've only seen the original editions, but I did take the battle scenes from the extended cut.
That's mostly what I've seen, like where they're kind of like moving around, like with that stupid like troll with the chain arms that seems to go all over the place, where you see it like die 3 times or something.
I haven't seen it. I remember though watching this scene where Gandalf is trying to take down a troll with magic, and then the staff is Radagast's staff, so it breaks, like it has a technical malfunction, and the troll eventually gets killed because what's his name, who was stealing all this gold, gets catapulted into the throat of this creature and basically chokes the thing to death. I watched the scene aghast and went and you have to remember, right, this transitions to the Lord of the Rings films. It's like, when did things get so serious in Lord of the Rings? And yes, I do know that the Hobbit book does have a different tone to the Lord of the Rings, but it never went that far.
Oh, I totally fully agree. The Hobbit really is like slaloms between really like juvenile and silly, and like really serious and dark, even darker than Lord of the Rings at times. Like the moment with Azog holding up the Dwarf King's head is like, wow. And then you have like bogey humor in like 20 minutes later, and it's just like, oh, come on. That was
I hear it was a troubled production in certain ways. I think Peter Jackson did not want to direct it. I think that is the reason behind it all.
yes. There was a lot of problems, like especially like because like Guillermo del Toro was originally on, and then he left. Probably Warner Brothers didn't like what he was doing because they wanted Lord of the Rings. So that's probably it. I imagine that a lot of the what is it? A lot of the pre-production time that they originally had was cut because because they were like, well, Guillermo del Toro, we're not going in that direction. Why don't we just, Peter Jackson, you have this amount of time, go for it. He's like, okay, I'll try my best. But yeah, poor guy.
Unfortunate. Although I was told by a commenter under the military analysis of the Battle of the Five Armies that apparently Andy Serkis was the one directing a large number of the military battles in the Battle of the Five Armies, but I haven't actually verified that.
I know that he was a B team director for Jackson. He like second unit or something. That totally makes sense. I think he even directed. I think that he directed the thing in the Rills and Dark section, but don't quote me on that. I just know that he filmed a number of scenes. But that actually is very interesting. If Mr. Serkis directed it, I imagine that probably a lot of it was probably because it's a lot of CG and he knows how to work CG stuff. But it just didn't quite turn out in the most optimal way, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It's a shame, but we always have the books.
Yeah. And I honestly, there are things that I like about the books a little bit more. Like I like Thorin in the movies a lot more than I like Thorin in the books. Mostly because Richard Armitage is very charismatic and is able to like bring a very amazing gravitas, and I'm just kind of a sucker for that kind of character, as opposed to a character like who in his first appearance gets dogpiled by accident when a door opens.
Did that happen in the book or film? My memory's getting sketchy now.
That happened in the book. So you know when all those dwarves like knock on the door and like bunch of them fall in. Originally, Thorin was at the bottom of the pile.
Huh. I need to read that book again.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting from this live stream right now. I need to read The Hobbit again.
Yeah, I am both blessed and cursed with a slightly eidetic memory, especially for books. As it makes rereading stuff very difficult sometimes. The only ones I'm able to really reread are the really, really long audiobooks, like Wheel of Time, Brandon Sanderson novels, etc.
I've heard his name dropped quite a bit. Is he a good writer?
Brandon Sanderson? Yes. Brandon Sanderson is excellent. He's written some of I think like he's one of the most unique and successful writers working out there. He doesn't necessarily go into mature stuff like the violence is kind of like pretty like fairly fairly strong, but he's able to do it in such a way that you just are just sucked in by the action. And I think like the best book that you could start out reading from him is actually Mistborn. It's a fantasy heist book where a bunch of criminals are just saying, all right, we've been contracted by this rebellion to steal the Lord Ruler or the Emperor, the Divine God Emperor's money. And so we will.
Whoa, is that one called Mistborn?
Yep.
Okay, I'll have to check that out when I've got time, because that sounds like a very very interesting combination of genres.
Yeah, and the magic system is really cool because Brandon Sanderson's unique in the field of magic systems because none of his magic systems for his books are the same. And a really cool thing about a lot of his fantasy books is they're on different planets in the same universe. And you'll notice cameos in some of his books show up in other books. Like, if you look carefully, there's always a character named Hoyd in each of his books. And it's slowly being revealed in Stormlight Archive, like, why this character is who he is, but it's very slow. But like Mistborn, like in Mistborn, like the unique magic system is called Allomancy, where Mistings or Mistborn will basically take a vial filled with various different types of metal shavings of an alcohol solution, down it, and then they get magic powers from burning the metal in their stomach like fuel.
So I'm guessing they have fire breath then? When
No.
they do this?
It's basically like, well, it's like I guess like they call it burning, but it's more like absorbing the metal into themselves to get power from it. Like pewter gives you enhanced physical abilities, including speed, durability, that sort of thing. Tin enhances all of your senses at once, but that comes with disadvantages. Like if you hear a loud noise, like it could disorient you, or a bright light. Steel and iron allow you to push and pull on metals respectively, but you have to be more heavy than the metal that you're pulling on. If you are heavier, if the object is heavier, or if the metal, if say a coin gets pushed against the ground, you're going to shoot upward.
This is all a cool set of powers and actually a really fun idea. And I'm now going to diminish it by saying, so the mages in this world effectively take the equivalent of speed in some cases? Heightened senses and
kind of.
moving faster.
Yeah, very much. And there's like 8 initial metals, and there's more discovered throughout the series. Like bronze allows you to see what other allomancers are doing. Copper allows you to hide yourself from other allomancers. And there's just a lot of fun stuff, like even one called Atium, which allows you to see the future of what somebody's going to do.
this is interesting. Is this the? So you say he keeps mixing up magic systems across his universe?
Yes. There are also ones. Let me see. Like one is Elantris, where the magic system is based on drawing drawing symbols in the air, like one for each, a different one for each spell. But one of the problems with what happened was the symbols no longer worked. And so Elantris, the city of gods, broke down, and now anybody who's born an Elantrian is cast into the city because they're almost like zombies. And so they had to figure out, okay, how do we fix the magic of Elantris to try and bring things back to normal?
Is magic depicted mainly as a neutral force in his world, or something evil? Because it's in sort of different fantasy authors. Sometimes they have different takes on this idea. With Lord of the Rings, we have magic being held by mythical creatures, and in stuff like Conan the Barbarian, for instance, all the magic is essentially used by wizards who are making pacts with demons, etc. And so magic is depicted as essentially morally evil. In Lord of the Rings, magic is used by both good and evil. What is Sanderson's take on it?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's various different things because you got Mistborn, Elantris. Mistborn's its own series. Elantris is its own series. Stormlight Archive is its own series. Warbreaker's its own series, and then he's got a couple of short novels. It really depends on the world and the culture. With Elantris, Elantrians used to be treated as holy, like they were gods among men, and they were able to use magic to heal people. But then a strange event happened that I won't spoil because it's very interesting, that basically made it so that magic no longer worked, and the Elantrians turned from glowing, like almost like angelic figures, to black and gray spotted demons that always feel any pain that they experience, that they first experience, just constantly until they go comatose. And it's kind of when somebody has the mark of the Elantrians like passed on them, they're thrown into the city, and just nobody thinks about them and thinks the Elantrians are cursed nowadays. But after the events of the book, I imagine that changes, because with Mistborn, it's actually like it's treated as a. It really depends, because if you're the Allomancy is supposed to be the reward from the Lord Ruler to the nobility, who were the descendants of his friends, who and were blessed with the ability to burn metals. And whenever a ska or one of the peasant class begins exhibiting allomancy, the steel inquisitors, guys with steel spikes through their eyes and very powerful allomancy, go after them and find them and kill them. But the nobility regularly use noble allomancers in order to further their political aims, like sending Mistborn assassins. Mistborn are people able to burn all of the metals, and that makes them very valuable, especially against Mistings, who can only burn one metal ever. In Stormlight Archive, the magic used to be the perspective of the Knights Radiant, who have since fallen into recreants, who 1,000 years ago left their duty and betrayed humanity, supposedly. And so nobody really knows what like the magic of surge binding is anymore, and it's kind of like left as like a myth almost. Same with the ancient enemies of the Knights Radiant, the Voidbringers. In Warbreaker, it kind of depends. Like with Warbreaker, instead of it being like a source, like in Mistborn's Metal Stormlight Archive, it's Stormlight, where it's this literal magical force that allows you to do various things relating to natural processes like control gravity, stick things together, travel through realms of reality, various stuff like that. With Warbreaker, it's more called breath, and each person is born with a breath, and people can buy breath, where they get breath from various people, from another person, and it's related to words spoken. And they can create a command. They can even like put a breath into a dead person and make it into what's called a lifeless. And you can make it do whatever you want by just saying a command to it. You can also give a few breaths to make a piece of cloth do what you want it to do. Sorry, that was very long-winded, but that one, it kind of depends. Like most people with breath in a specific culture have a like a good stigma attached to them. They are it's breath is usually a sign of high status, because it takes a lot of money to get a lot of breaths, because you're actually asking somebody to give them a piece of their soul. But in another country that doesn't like that sort of thing, that believes the breath is sacred, they'd be like, no, it's awakeners are terrible. So it really kind of depends. Like Brandon Sanderson does a really good job of doing various different kinds of things with how people observe magic in his world.
I'm assuming he creates new systems of magic each time to sort of approach different moral questions, or to explore different aspects of the nature of being, etc.
Yes. Oh, go for it. Sorry, I cut you off.
Or is it because he's brainstorming and says to himself, "Breath, that sounds cool."
He actually does do a lot of good, interesting things about kind of talking about like the nature of souls and stuff. With with how breath works. He also kind of explores like how various cultures like view the soul. With Mistborn, it's kind of more relating to the kind of character of Vin as she learns more about how to use her powers from various different mentors. She kind of learns to be more accepting as a human, as a person, and gets to interact with them more. But with Stormlight Archive, the powers are based around oaths that the knights swore, and their power is directly proportional to how well they keep their promises. Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of fun, but yeah, I just barely heard of this guy. I'm wondering, why haven't I heard of him before?
Well, like he's really big in America. I don't know how big he is in Britain. But he's kind of like he's big mostly in like Wheel of Time, because he finished the last 3 Wheel of Time books because the author died before he could finish the last 3 ebooks.
Wait, so, Brandon Sanderson died, or the person writing the Wheel of Time?
The person, Robert Jordan, the guy writing the Wheel of Time books. Sorry, my apologies.
Oh, yeah, that's another name and another set of books. I've heard the names dropped, but I must confess that I found it difficult to find media I either want to read, watch, or and that have you ever since popular culture has become what it has, I found it really difficult to find entertainment to both enjoy and to interact with.
Hmm.
The
Could you
most
elaborate on that? Could you elaborate on that? That sounds interesting.
Well, I'll say that the most recent actual feature length film I've watched has been Apocalypse Now Deluxe, which I found really impressive. But I had that disc on me for a while, and it took me weeks to get round to watching it. I don't know. It's just I've almost accepted that there's nothing coming from the mainstream or elsewhere which will really tickle
Tickle your
my
fancy,
mind.
or
Yeah,
tickle your
tickle my
fancy.
fancy, tickle my mind, my emotions, maybe even my soul in some cases. Uh, so I've been trying to get back to sort of the older classics. So I finished Lord of the Rings not so long ago, and I want to read what inspired it, such as the Norse sagas, for instance, and
Hmm.
a lot of the old stuff. At some point, I want to try and read the Ionad, which is um,
Is
written
that
by
the Aeneid? Is that the story of how Aeneas founded Rome, or at least like got to Rome?
yes, by Virgil, a name I've heard dropped a few times, but haven't actually investigated. Um, I'm just kind of disconnected with like mainstream popular media, um, which I suppose it's not good. I'm supposed to be a YouTube critic, but I find myself very uninterested in a lot of what's going on.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Have
have
you
to
felt
agree. Oh, go for it.
have you felt that?
It kind of depends. I've kind of been going to like kind of niche stuff. Like I've been finding like a lot of like TV shows like Travelers, Frontier, um, and some other stuff like that I've found on Netflix that is just like, oh, okay, this is actually like pretty good. And it's kind of like, but like, yeah, I would kind of agree that kind of like it's a lot of niche stuff. Like I'm enjoying The Boys season 2 so far, and I'm very much looking forward to the Wheel of Time adaptation that's coming out probably hopefully sometime next year. Um, that's kind of what I'm interested in seeing. But yes, like stuff like Mulan, that just barely came out. Like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. Uh,
Have you seen it?
yes, I have. It was
Is it
bad.
as bad as they say?
Yes, it's about as bad as they say. Yeah.
Oh boy. Um, I mean, I,
It's it's my least favorite out of all the Disney sequels. So I think Lion King might be worse. Mulan just kind of offends me personally.
I did never watched the remake, sorry, live action version of Aladdin and the live action, quote unquote, version of The Lion King. I took one look at both of them and said, no. I
Yeah.
I mean, did you see the profanity? Did you see Doom COCK's video on?
Overlord DVD.
Yeah, that guy. Did you see his video on the Disney Vault and Disney's acquisition of Fox, relating to the takedown of many videos from the cinemas? So Die Hard no longer being you can no longer screen Die Hard in a cinema now due to Disney's orders now that they have acquired Fox.
Really? I did not hear that. Okay, I'll have to take a look at that. That sounds interesting. Uh,
Um, the essential breakdown. I'll see if I can find it and throw it in the Discord or something. But essentially, Disney now owns a lot of IPs, and what they're doing is they are not allowing them to be screened in cinemas. For instance, at Die Hard in this case, and what they're doing is they seem to be moving all their stuff to their streaming platforms. And Overlord DVD Master was saying how he believes this will be part of a big strategy to just remake these films again and again so that they can release them into cinemas and maybe even completely delete certain films out of existence if they're too problematic, to use the woke terminology.
I hate that. That's so awful.
Get your DVDs is what I say to that.
Yeah, I need to order some. I guess I need to order Die Hard and such. That's horrible. It's so annoying.
Yeah, and that's where this lovely Mulan creation comes into its own. Although I don't think they'll ever delete or throw the original Disney Mulan film down the memory hole.
Yeah, I would concur with that. It's probably just going to be forgotten, hopefully. Kind of like the other Disney remakes, which are the only one that I thought was like decent was Jungle Book. I thought Jungle Book was fine. I didn't think that one was like too bad. But that's just me. Like your mileage may vary.
I haven't seen that one either.
I don't blame you. They've got a bad track record.
I mean, at this point, I think Disney has said to itself, "Okay, here's the plan. We will make remakes, and we shall buy companies which actually have ideas."
Yeah. Problem is with Lucasfilm, at least most of the ideas are bad.
It's a funny story how that one came about, but to be fair, Disney did buy Pixar and Marvel, and that was mint essentially.
Yeah, license to print money.
Whilst Lucasfilm, 2 out of 3, and then they've got Fox now. So, I mean, oh boy.
Eventually, they'll probably try to find a way to buy Netflix, but I think that Netflix is now getting way too big for them to buy.
Yeah, although its stocks aren't doing so well at the moment.
Oh, really? I will have to take a look at that. I'll need to start. Well, I know they're still expensive. Like it's like $500 per stock.
Yeah, I haven't investigated the details myself, but John Talks, if you've heard of him or seen his channel, it's basically covering the affair.
Oh, really? Okay.
Huh. Yeah, so he's covering the affair as to what's happening with Netflix at the moment.
Okay. I will have to take a look at him. I know that right now, like most of my investments are actually in cruise ships.
Cruise ships?
Yes. So basically, like what happened was, basically before the crash, like I had like $6,000 saved up in a Roth IRA. So I just like didn't do anything with it. And then when the crash happened and cruise ships dropped from $60 to $7, I was like, all right, opportunity awaits. So I just dropped a lot of money in stocks. Admittedly, like it took a while for my thing to do anything. So it ended up going up to $12. But right now it's gone up from $12 to $18. And it kind of sometimes fluctuates down to 13. So I'll be like, buying you up.
Well, when things settle, you'll probably be in a good situation. I knew someone who was buying stocks in Coca-Cola. It's like, yeah, regardless of what happens, there's always going to be people who are wanting to buy that sugary substance.
Indeed, I would concur with that. There's always going to be them people that want that Coca-Cola. Oh, yes. I do love Hello Future Me. Hello Future Me is excellent.
I really liked he's a great channel. I really liked his videos on hard and soft magic systems. It's a good way to categorize a lot of magic systems which you encounter in fiction and media.
Yeah. Brandon Sanderson actually came up with most of those terms.
Really?
He actually created the idea of hard and soft magic systems in one of his essays. And like he actually created Sanderson's 3 rules of magic. One was explain clearly before you expand. Limitations are often more interesting than powers. And your ability to solve problems with magic is directly proportional with how well the reader understands your magic system.
These are good rules.
Yeah, like, and the coolest thing about Brandon is he also does lectures, academic lectures, since he's a teacher at BYU Brigham Young University, and all of his lectures are on his channel on YouTube.
I think I've seen a couple pop up in the suggestion feeds. I'll have to investigate. It's always been when I'm so they've always been suggested whenever I've been watching a YouTuber called David Stewart, who is an author and also gives tips on writing and ideas for critiquing fiction.
Yeah, I quite like David Stewart. Like, I think like he was maybe even like either subconsciously or consciously, he was one of my inspirations. So like, okay, in order to get my books out there, I gotta start doing a YouTube channel or finding some way to market myself.
Marketing is key in like all these affairs.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. If you don't do any marketing, you're never gonna be able to do it. So, it's funny, but it's just like, oh, come on, I wish I could do this. But yeah, I think one thing that I'm like at least like pretty happy with is at least like my output over the past few months, since I've been able to put out one book a month for the past 3 months, since I was able to finish off a bunch of books earlier this year, so that I could specifically for the purpose of publishing a bunch of books all in a row.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah. So currently my tally is 9, and I've got a 10th book coming out sometime this week. I just need to do another editing pass on it.
What's your secret?
I'm just prolific. Partially it's like I'm self-publishing. So what I'll do usually, especially when I'm like working on like a project, I'll usually think up an idea for another project. So I'll start writing that, but I'll try to focus on the stuff that I finished quite a bit of, and I'll just kind of assemble that into, alrighty, so this is my picks for my assembly line for this particular writing season, and I'll try to finish those as much as I can before I work on like a lot of my newer stuff.
Do you get many people to read the books in advance? To read multiple drafts?
I haven't really done, like, I mostly will like I've done it a few times. Like I have a writers group, and I'll usually like try to do like at least like 2 to 3 drafts. Second draft is usually actually while I'm writing the book, where I'll be like, okay, I need to change the wording here, or be very choosy about what I do, what I say. so I don't write something really stupid. I mostly most of my books are relatively short. I actually have a few physical copies with me right now. Like I have, this is one example of one of my books, King of Damnation. It's kind of big because it's like big print, but then I've also got shorter books like Wrath of the Dragon Queen and Rise of the Dark Queen. So that's a lot of what I'll do is like I'll just rotate through projects in order to keep up my creativity.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I've noticed that you've written over 10 books on Amazon at least.
I've written 9 so far. I've written one completed trilogy, and that was the Perion Chronicles. Then I've finished and then I'm halfway through the Dark Queen series, with the third one coming out sometime this week. And then I've got 2 books in my ongoing Dragonlord anthology series. Then I've got a starter in my Dark Champion series, Dark Champion trilogy. And then I have one book in my Bloodied Crown trilogy. I'm still working on trying to figure out the other 2 books. And I have the let me see what were, and I think that's it, actually.
So you sound like exactly the person to ask. This is a question I've been meaning to ask quite a few different YouTube critics and YouTube creators and novelists who are within reach. What, in your estimation, is art and story for?
I think it kind of depends on I think it really depends on the writer, honestly, and what the writer tries to do. Like, I would say the goals of someone like Brandon Sanderson would be very different than someone like the guy who wrote the Jason Bourne novels, or the H.P. Love, or how H.P. Lovecraft wrote his novels. I think that part of it, like for me, it's partially to entertain, to kind of look at questions that we might not be able to explore in real life. Like one example that I had was, especially in my Dragonlord series, is kind of asking the questions of what does the cycle of war do to people? What does what's the necessary thing that needs to happen in order to end it usually? Or and why does a cycle perpetuate? With that's with War of the Dragons, one of my upcoming novels. With Wrath of the Dragon, it was the question of how monstrous can you get in order to protect your family, was the question I wanted to ask with that one, where because of this man, the enemy that they're facing, the main character has to impose a lot of brutal methods on the elves, because they're trying to destabilize the kingdom and eventually take over the kingdom, destroy it, and set themselves up. So he has to do a mass genocide of the elves and the dwarves with his dragon, and destroy their individual capitals in order to ensure the survival of his family. So I think like there's a lot of good answers, but that's for me it's like entertain but also give somebody an experience they haven't gotten to or something they might not get in reality and try to like explore questions that might not otherwise get explored.
Do you often have some conclusions in your own mind as to what the answer to some of these questions might be when writing, or do you sort of discover?
Um, some of them I discover. Sometimes I'll be like kind of writing and I'll just like, okay, I have this story, but I'm not quite sure of the theme. But I think with I believe it was War of the Dragons, I just kind of discovered that like originally I was going to have it kind of end with a battle where the kind of the young prince comes back, Simba style, to defeat his half brother who has taken the throne. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I think that would just lead to a cycle of recriminations that wouldn't work with the next book that I'm going to be writing. So what I did instead was I had the cycle of violence just keeps happening where people keep dying on both sides of this family. So the ending was the brothers make peace and the older brother remains as king, but he keeps his brother on as his right hand. That was kind of the conclusion I came to. And I think that kind of with Wrath of the Dragon, at least, I think it's ultimately up to the reader to kind of decide, was Magor justified in doing what he did, in terms of, was it a good idea that he did that to the elves, even though it seemed justified to him at the time? And that just allows me to ask a number of really interesting questions. And whether or not somebody like agrees or disagrees is up to them with some of them, but I'm hoping that at least with a few of them they do get like the ideas that I'm trying to present, and I hope that I just hope that I've conveyed them in an effective and coherent manner.
All sounds fun and cool. My I as a further question, what do you see as the place in society? What do you how where do you see stories and art in society? So on a um individual level, it may the exploration of multiple morals, themes, questions, is something which is a function which a lot of I guess philosopher types really eat up. And I know a couple who they will read stories with questions that you've raised in your tales, and they'll be like, "Oh, this makes me think." Um, do you see how that might interact with society?
So like as in like how like my books interact with this, like I guess like an example might be Catcher in the Rye. How that was meant as one thing but taken as another. Is that what you're trying to get at, or is it something else?
I'm trying to guess at does art does art have does art um
An
have like
intrinsic purpose.
function in society?
Hmm.
As in, do you think art should have any specific goals for society, or no?
Like should art be portraying an ideal society? Um,
Maybe something like that. Maybe not that specifically.
okay. Um, that's actually a very good question. I think that part of the thing with art in stories is to um I think a lot of it is kind of like, as I kind of said before, a lot of it is kind of rooted in kind of a lot of art is rooted in kind of something about the human condition. either a piece of the human condition that we wouldn't otherwise get to see, or a piece of the human condition that we just might not get to interact with, because like most people don't get to, maybe aren't ever going to get the chance to like ride a dragon or such like, or be faced with very hefty moral conundrums. And I've seen art kind of serve multiple functions. Like for some people, like I know my mom, when she reads Brandon Sanderson, she says, I want to be a better person because of these books, because the people in the books are flawed, but they're very good people, and they're trying their best despite hefty problems being placed against them. And I think that kind of like it can kind of depend on like what I think it's ultimately up to the creator what kind of function they want their art to do. It ultimately will very much depend on, okay, how well is this art? How well does this art work? How well does this piece of media function? Does it support the themes and ideas, and how simple or base are the themes versus maybe how complex are the themes, but do these themes support themselves despite the complexity of the work, if that makes sense. I hope that answered your question. I can go on if I can try and give a better answer if that didn't suffice.
No, I think I get you. It's I mean, would you let's assume I wrote some story which was I was trying to put it out there, and it encouraged essentially and celebrated all kinds of vices rather than virtues. Would you have an objection? Let's for sake of argument, let's pretend that it is really well written. There's no plot holes or whatever, and the characterization is good. But I am portraying vice as a good thing, or I'm portraying vices as virtues. Would you have any issues with that type of creativity?
That's an excellent question. I honestly am like, that's an interesting question. I would have to let me think about that. I don't fully know like how I would feel about that. It would kind of very much depend. I think that the nice thing about a lot of a lot of people writing, like even the worst people usually will portray like there's some element of vice usually tearing somebody apart, or it not working out well for them. But I guess in this hypothetical case, like say it was like Dorian Gray, if there was no painting, I guess, would that be kind of like maybe, I guess that could be like a possible hypothetical where like there are no consequences. He gets to live his life, and it doesn't matter. He's just this horrible, lecherous scoundrel, and he just gets away with it. It might even be an interesting examination of things, because sometimes in real life that happens where vice is unpunished. I think that it would very much depend on, I think a lot of the response to it would depend on the reader. In this case, like if it's well written, I think honestly people could take a lot of things out of it. It could be like, ow, it's terrible. I wish he got his. And I don't know how like satisfying that would be. It could be even, some people might see it as escapism. If you're kind of like looking toward the like the function of that. I don't know if I have a solid answer for that, other than I don't fully know if there is like an argument. I don't have a problem personally because I've read some dark stuff, uh, like the First Law trilogy and uh, the books by the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence. So I think that's a very interesting question. I wish I had a better answer, other than it very much depends on the reader, I would say, in terms of I don't really have any objection to people putting various vices in their story, or even like portraying vices bad or good, since you could just kind of have a character that has vices, and ultimately there's a thing that could be related to reality, where it's just like, nah, this sometimes just people get away from with this sort of thing, and it's really, really annoying, but we kind of have to live with things like this.
That is a fair point. I mean, what if imagine if it was actually trying to promote promote it, so we could have a character who cheats on his wife, and it's portrayed as the greatest thing in the world, and his wife, there's nothing wrong with her, he just likes to cheat. It's because vice-filled characters have always existed in fiction, and our fiction would be kind of dull if we had paragons of virtue. We do need characters who are human in the sense of they can't do everything, or even more human in the sense of they have many demons which they wrestle with. So I'm less talking about what is precisely portrayed, as in how it's portrayed.
Like basically, like if maybe Dorian Gray suffered no consequences for what he does, or what he does as is portrayed like it is for James Bond. Is that would that be an example?
Yeah, we can go with James Bond. James Bond is a good example, I suppose. He just fornicates, and he drinks but he doesn't drink that much alcohol, as far as I can tell in films. Apparently in the books he drinks far more. I need to read some James Bond novels, actually. That's another thing to put on the list. By all traditional standards of morality, he is fornicating a lot, and it's portrayed as a glamorous and good thing. And he isn't getting into serious relationships with any of these women. Well, in the newer films, they have moved in the direction of making sure that he has more serious relationships, but in the former films, he's just having flings. He's sort of having his fun and then leaving them. Would that be? Is that an issue authors should think about?
I think very much there should be an understanding of what is fiction and what is reality. And
agreed.
Sometimes there's kind of that unfortunate example of somebody taking fiction way too far and saying like, oh, he behaved like this here, I'm going to behave like this in my own life. And probably they're going to get very quickly delusioned in a lot of cases. But I think that it kind of depends. Like, I think like I think that mostly with James Bond, it's very much escapist fantasy in a lot of ways. So I don't really see that much of a problem with it. I think that kind of like if something is like, I think that like a question could be made if like something promoting like say hate speech was popular. I think I would have a bigger problem with that. like if hate speech were portrayed as glamorous, like I would find that really frustrating as just a reader. I'd be like, this just isn't pleasant. I don't like reading this. I think that a big part is whether or not the reader takes it on board, because in some ways, like, James Bond is kind of ridiculous.
He is he's sort of a Superman, I suppose, really.
Mm-hmm. And there's kind of like no real like consequences for anything he does. He's just kind of a like guy who just does whatever he wants. And kind of, I think there's some measure of like, we would like to be him, but we know we in our brain that we can't. I honestly like don't know. I don't really have any moral imperatives on fiction. I do like it when a good like firm stance regarding like a message is given, and it's a very well delivered message. But when it like gets to be preachy, it's just like, I'm really annoyed by this. But I've kind of like I really am annoyed by the word problematic. I find that word is thrown around so often that it's lost its meaning. And I just like, okay, if you're not like deliberately spewing hate speech, I'm fine with you. I'm with whatever work you do. Just do it in terms of the craft. Do it, make it well crafted. But if it's like if it portrays bad behavior as good, I honestly don't have I don't have an answer, because I haven't really thought much about that. That is a very good question. Thank you. Sorry if I rambled for a while trying to figure out an answer. I apologize.
Oh no, that's fine, because well, I didn't ask myself that question for years. Not really. And I think it's truthfully, I think it's a question that a lot of people online might want to ask themselves, especially for us when we're looking at the latest film or whatever coming out from Hollywood or whatever.
Yeah, especially since like a lot of times the people who will like revert view content will go with like moral arguments usually a lot of the time to justify why they like something or don't like something. Like a lot of people were like clutching their pearls over Joker, but they were saying TLJ is the most amazing Star Wars movie.
It's quite funny how that works, isn't it? If you think about every single person who liked The Last Jedi, and then you say, well, what about X, Y, and Z? We've all talked about this. And they'll say, form doesn't matter. The form of an artwork doesn't matter. But if you show these same people like a Christian film, such as God Is Not Dead, which is very badly formed, they suddenly, I mean, they will have their moral arguments against it. They will make moral arguments against it, but they are almost certainly going to point out the bad form of the film in question. They're not going to say, "Oh well, form doesn't matter." They'll use it against stuff like that. But whenever it's anything they like, they're like, "Oh, form, it doesn't matter."
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I feel that. Like it's like Maggie May Fish, and kind of like Maggie May Fish talking about like Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas versus Fight Club, where she is negative toward both, but Fight Club has more philosophical rather than form reasons. But Kirk Cameron is more form without is more like form without as well as bad moral messaging, because it's hard not to notice all of the bad things in Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas, because it's not even a movie. It's just Kirk Cameron filming himself and his friends in his house, and it's some soundstage he rented for like $20.
I have not heard of it. This should I have heard of it?
It got a very limited release, made barely any money, and has a 0% to this day on Rotten Tomatoes.
So is it room levels of good, or?
Okay. So you have a moment where a Santa or Saint Nicholas walks into a bar, like he's being told about this by he's so how the structure works is basically Kirk Cameron is coming up with BS rationalizations for every single weird pagan thing in Christmas, by telling his brother weird things like, oh, so the tree is really a symbol of the cross, and the reason why Christ had to put himself on the tree was because Adam stole the apple and Christ was the last Adam, and so he put himself on the tree to make recompense. And so whenever you see a tree, think of a cross. And Kirk Cameron doesn't fully understand the ramifications. So if you put a Christmas tree that has lights on it, you're putting a lighted cross in a person's yard. By that logic.
What? I mean, half right, I suppose, but what?
Yeah, or but some of it's like terrible filmmaking, like when he tells the story of how Saint Nick, Saint Fran of somewhere or other, came, like, wanted to discuss, like, found some people who were kind of wavering in their faith. It looks like somebody bought these from like a like some Jobo fabric store like down the street, and it's supposed to be in like ancient medieval times, where Saint Nicholas grabs the guy, slams his face onto the bar, drags him out, and starts stabbing him with his cane.
A candy cane or a cane?
An actual cane.
This is sounding about as good as The Room by the sound of things.
Yeah, it's like mostly it's like just, and like in the end, like there's like there's this his brother's just kind of being a humbug, and it's like kind of the most like glorification of materialism ever put to film. Which is kind of weird, because he's saying like God gave us his material body, and so we celebrate with material things.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And like in the end, like the guy's like, and like he's like kind of, we could have done all of this work for charity, like with all the money we spent on presents. And then Kirk Cameron's like, you're right, but you're also wrong. Let me explain things to you.
Okay, maybe I should watch this.
It's very funny, and it ends with him nosediving into a bunch of presents and saying, imagine it's the skyline of Jerusalem. And then he says to his wife, I want to give you a gift that I've been wanting to give you for a long time. She says, what do you got for me, Big Papa? He's like, well, I have assembled a Christmas-themed breakdancing rap group in order to convey the joy and Christmas spirit that I, as one man alone, cannot express. And then that's what happens for the next several minutes.
And this YouTube critic liked that film? I mean, it sounds
No,
hilarious.
she
Though,
hated
don't
it.
get
Oh
me
no,
wrong.
she hated it. Oh, she hated it. Oh, she hated it. But like, she picked very different reasons to hate Kirk Cameron. Just as many. Like, she could mostly like she couldn't really say that Fight Club itself was like badly written or constructed, but she did remark about like Kirk Cameron stuff being like badly formed, as well as like having a really terrible message. Just like, it's kind of rough when it's just like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But this movie is just so stupid that it fails to reach anybody.
Well, people said that about The Room, but it has reached a lot of people since. Maybe not for the reasons the director and writer intended.
Yes, very, very much not. And like, yeah, it's very it's very like, it's just kind of like, it's kind of like strange to kind of see like, I think like somebody like Just Right standards kind of shift from thing to thing depending on what, like, on seemingly arbitrary things. Like, he did a whole video on why he hates Bathos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but then he did a video on the amazing characters of TLJ.
It's funny as well because in his earlier in his YouTubing, he made a series of videos about why the Last Airbender film was bad, and he was focused mainly on form. And come The Last Jedi, he basically doesn't talk about form when it comes to The Last Jedi, which is his prerogative if he wanted to talk about other stuff, but about the film. But he, I mean, I remember watching a conversation he had with Mauler and Dishonorable Wolf at the time, and he said that he just wasn't interested in talking about those aspects of fiction anymore,
Mm.
which is fair enough. But he's quite. I actually like Just Right because he was quite honest. He didn't try to argue that the writing was like the plot and everything was well formed. Um, but he instead argued about the other aspects of the film.
Mm. Yeah, I think the part of it's just like, but the weirdest thing was he did the same thing for Game of Thrones later on and kind of brought up pretty much all of the criticisms of the Last Jedi and put it to Game of Thrones season 8, which like is kind of just like talking about like how subverting expectations can go wrong. And it's kind of just like, and it seemed a big part of it was like the themes that he didn't like were a lot of the things that he didn't like about Game of Thrones were like the themes of Game of Thrones that he took out of it were women are too emotional for power, redemption doesn't mean anything, and if you don't want the throne, you should be king.
I haven't watched his video on Game of Thrones season 8. I'll have to go and do that then. But he was concerned about form with that one.
Yeah, I think like he took like a narrative structure to it, like as well as like talking about how like Jon versus Arya doesn't mean anything, like because it would have been more subversive if just a random person had killed the Night King rather than Arya Stark. But
True.
ultimately, it would have been more satisfying if somebody like there was actual like thought put into the subversion, and they should have considered more like what the story was saying, since even like I think David Benioff himself said, like I think in 2013 when asked about the overall intentionality of the story, Benioff, the showrunner, replied, "Themes are for 8th grade book reports."
Wait, what?
Apparently he was drunk. But like when somebody asked him for a quote, he said he just snapped, themes are for eighth grade book reports when asked about like intentionality of the series of the TV show. Which I would not agree with that statement. I think that is like just a very like bad idea to say that is, because like there are a lot of people who find the most important element of literature to be the themes. Like a lot of people still read a lot of the greats, such as Charles Dickens and such, because of the themes.
Yeah, and the exploration of multiple of the big questions in life, or the questions which are pertinent to society and individuals at that particular stage in time.
Mm-hmm. Like, though there are kind of people who take it too far, like I think we've been reading a book on my channel called Framing Monsters by Joshua David Bellin, and he reads some weird stuff into some fantasy movies where he says, because of fantasy movies' timelessness, their how to put it, their social alienation practices are more insidious, because people just don't regard it, don't take notice totally, and like he says, King Kong is an example of black propaganda as from the 1930s as black man is raping apist wanting a white woman.
That is a strange take.
Yeah, as well as like Jurassic Park is a movie about the patriarchal family unit being assaulted by monstrous loose women.
Is he saying that women are feral like T-Rexes then?
Well, he's saying that is toxic and kind of just saying because they're all female, like it's a toxic thing. But even though, like, weirdly enough, he says that King Kong 1938 is his favorite movie ever, or 1933, I mean. And it's just like it takes us like 5 to 6 hours to read a chapter because we're just talking about it.
That is one heck of a task.
Yeah, so far we've only gotten through the introduction, which was about 20 pages, the chapter on King Kong, and the chapter on Wizard of Oz, which was about how Wizard of Oz is emblematic of class conflict.
I've actually heard that one before.
Yeah, we weren't like too mad about that one. We were just like, okay, I guess. We weren't like as insulted as when he just like went on like 20-minute like history lesson about like race related riots and lynchings that happened and how they were synonymous with King Kong.
Yeah, I don't buy that one.
Yeah. Or like how Aliens is sexist because the alien queen is representative of the black welfare mom going after the white wasp.
Wait, say that again, sorry?
So what he said was apparently there was a quote by somebody that said that the alien queen is racist because she is emblematic of the black welfare mom creating way too many kids versus Ripley, the white wasp woman.
I think he's literally aiming for the most political of takes that he can possibly make.
Yeah, and it's weird because guess when this book came out?
Wasn't 2000 and something, was it?
It's 2005, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so that type of analysis took its time getting to YouTube then. because
Yeah.
you'll hear those type of things now from lots of other YouTubers.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just kind of weird how that just kind of happens, where like in I just found out because this guy called Sorian Cinema um did a review of Jurassic Park and cited a lot of things from that book. And I was just like, me and the Smudcast were just dying laughing because this was like, how are you making all of these weird, like, gendered claims about Jurassic Park that don't really have any merit or basis in reality? Um, it was just so like, and then just I was like, I'm buying this book. I'm reading this on stream. I need to see what my guest reactions are to this.
Wow, we've been going on for almost 2 hours now, and I might have to go in a minute.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. It's like what 1 a.m. for you over on your end?
It's nearly midnight actually.
Oh, okay. Well, cool.
I mean, it's a great chat and everything.
But all good things must come to an end, unfortunately.
Yeah, alas.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
Thank you for inviting me on.
of course, it's been a fun conversation. I hope that I've been a gracious host to you, and that you'll come back again, because this was excellent. I've been really glad to have just this meeting of the minds with you over like storytelling and stuff, and I hope that like it's been that I've been able to answer your questions in a way that was to your satisfaction.
Yeah, and these are questions I think everyone needs to keep asking, and having just just throwing the ideas out and seeing what sticks.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. Alrighty. Was there anything like left that you would like to just chat about maybe in the last 8 minutes, or shall we just close things out?
Ooh, to be honest, nothing comes to mind that we couldn't discuss at a later date.
Alrighty, cool. Well, if you want to chat again, please hit me up on Discord. I'd love to like answer some of your questions and like just go have a dialogue back and forth, because this was excellent.
Yeah,
you're a really smart guy.
Oh, I'm not that smart.
You're at least very knowledgeable of your chosen field.
Well, why? Thank you. That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes.
Oh, I make mistakes too, all the time. But anyway, I have to say to everybody here, thank you so much for coming, and thank you to my guest, King Emperor Penguin. He has been an absolute treasure and a delight. So I will have to say, fare thee well, and
Go! Holy shit. Okay, we're going. Go!